Yeah. Okay.
So good morning, everybody. So what we're going to discuss today is the shofar, and it's an enigma. Why is it an enigma? Because basically nothing is written in the Torah regarding Rosh Hashanah, but nothing. Let's do the psukim of the Torah. There are two psukim in the Torah which speak about the mitzvah of Rosh Hashanah. One is in Parshat Emor, and the other was in Parshas Pinchas. Let's see what's written in Parshat Pinchas, in Parshat Emor. Vaydaber Hashem el Moshe le'emor, daber b'nei Yisrael, line number 5. דבר בני ישראל לאמור בחודש השביעי באחד לחודש 7th month first day יהיה לכם, you shall have. Now please take note of the next 4 words: Shabbaton, Zichron, Tru'ah, Mikra Kodesh, and then כל מלאכת עבודה לא תעשו. So therefore you've got what is known as a Shabbaton, a holiday, public holiday, bank holiday in England. Shabbaton, nothing, don't do anything. Okay, that's Shabbaton. Zichron, what does Zichron mean? Memory. Tru'ah, the day of Tru'ah. Mikra Kodesh, where everybody gets together. That's the pasuk. Okay? Those are the 4 words, the description of Rosh Hashanah. Shabbaton, Zichron, a day of memory, a day of Tru'ah, and Mikra Kodesh, and then Isur Melocha. Now, what does it mean, Tru'ah? Now, let's take the next one.
So you separate Zichron and Tru'ah are separate.
Well, that's what it means.
It's not Zichron Tru'ah.
Why not? Why?
Why? Right.
What does Zichron mean? Is it a construct form, Zichron Tru'ah, a memory of Tru'ah, or is it Zichron and Tru'ah? Is there a comma in between? Okay? Now we all learn that we call it Zichron Tru'ah. Who says so? Pardon?
Hebrew.
What's Hebrew?
Zikaron.
No.
Zikaron.
That's Zikar. No.
Zikaron is
No. No. Okay. Let's look in the Tanakh.
Good.
Okay, what do we say in Rosh Hashanah? Malchuyot, Zichronot. What's the singular of Zichronot? No, it's not. It's Zichron. Okay?
No, isn't Zichron Tru'ah Smichut? Zichron Tru'ah.
No.
Zikaron shel Tru'ah.
No. One minute. You're already using. Oh, 1 minute. Okay.
Which is called destroying myths.
100%. Okay. Let's look in Sefer. Sorry, let me just find you the pasuk. One minute. Ki ein zichron lachacham im aksil. What's zichron lachacham here? Is it zichron or is zichron is a memory? Now we always translate it because of that, and here became a huge machlotek amongst the chachamim. between Rabbi Akiva and other Tanaim. Do we say Zichron Truah? How does Rashi explain this pasuk? Rashi explains this pasuk by saying that Psukei Zichronot, Psukei Shofarot, and Malchuyot. So Rashi does break up the pasuk into component parts. Because if you wouldn't say that, you wouldn't be able to say they're psukim of Zichronot. So Rashi did understand that the word Zichron is a day where you have to remember HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and that is the source of Zichronot. That's the way Rashi interpreted it. So correct. Okay, sometimes we have to look at the Torah in a different way, not what we taught in Kita Aleph. Now, let's go to the next stage. Next pasuk. בחודש השביעי באחד לחודש מקרא קודש יהיה לכם כל מלאכת עבודה לא תעשו יום תרועה יהיה לכם. A day of תרועה. Where does it say shofar? Doesn't say anywhere in the Torah what you do. It's a day of blowing. Is it a day of blowing the shofar? Is it a day of listening to the shofar? What is it? What? Doesn't say shofar either. Doesn't say anything.
Doesn't say blowing.
It doesn't say blowing, exactly.
Or it could be shattering.
It could be shattering, a day of shattering. Because what does the word Tru'ah mean basically? Breaking down. David HaMelech uses the word in Perek Bet in Sefer Tehillim, Tru'em b'shevet barzel, break them down. Because Tru'ah is a broken sound. It is not complete. It is broken from the word ra, shattered, broken, smashed. So it's a day of shattering. That is the translation. Yom Teruah is a day of shattering, a day of breaking. So what's written in the Torah? Zilch, nothing. Now, the Ramban wrote a famous drasha. He said a famous drasha on Rosh Hashanah. And we know that he said it after he arrives in Akko. Akko. After the famous debate, he leaves Spain and he comes to live in Eretz Israel. And he comes approximately a week before Rosh Hashanah, 2 weeks before Rosh Hashanah, to Eretz Israel. And in Akko, he meets a few of the Balei HaTosfot. They have run away from the Crusades. And they meet in Akko. And they ask the Ramban to speak, give a drosha on Rosh Hashanah. Now, it's not the usual 5-minute drosha. It's a 10-page drosha. Okay, gave it Rosh Hashanah afternoon.
He wrote big.
Pardon?
He wrote very big.
And it's an amazing insight. Because that's exactly what he does. His first chapter is he breaks down into component parts every single question which he has on Rosh Hashanah. And his whole drosha is trying to answer all these things. Let's start off. V'hinei lo nitparesh b'Torah ha'Torah hazot. It's not written in the Torah. What are you going to use? What is the vessel? What is the musical instrument you're going to use for shofar, for Torah? In b'shofar, in b'chatzotzrot. Because those are the two kelim which are mentioned in the Torah regarding making a sound. Utkatem b'chatzotzrot. Okay, utkatem b'shofar, regarding Yovel. Pardon? V'harei V'chein lo piresh tama mitzvah. It's not mentioned what the reason is. Why are you going to blow the shofar? Now, what's so special? We know Pesach. We know Yitzias Mitzrayim, Sukkot. We know Yom Kippur. We know Shavuos. We know Chag HaKatzir. Nothing to do with Matan Torah. But why Rosh Hashanah? What's so special on the first day of the 7th month that you're going to blow or you're going to do something? V'lama nitztarech zikaron lifnei Hashem ביום הזה יותר משעה ימים. ולמה יצווה לי אותו מקרא קודש, כמו שהזכרתי למעלה? So the Ramban says, I don't understand the word Truah, I don't understand the word Zichron, I don't understand Mikra Kodesh, I don't understand anything. What's it there for? Why? Aval, so perhaps the Ramban says, מפני שקראו הכתוב יום זיכרון, ומפני שהוא בחודשו של יום כיפורים בראש השנה, ירמוז שיהיה הדין לפני הקדוש ברוך הוא. Perhaps it's connected to Yom Kippur. Perhaps. Okay? Perhaps that's what it is. Now, line number 25. והנה ניתנה לנו התורה, העניין הזה ברמז. All what's written in Torah שבכתב is a remez, it's a hint. ועדיין הוא בידינו קבלה ומפורסם בתלמוד. We need to rely on what? Kabbalah, not Torah Sheba'al Peh, not Kabbalah as Kabbalah. Kabbalah means Torah Sheba'al Peh, ובתלמוד. ומי שזכה להיות מקובל בסתרי תורה, somebody who understands the depths and the secrets of the Torah, יראה עניין מפורש בכתוב ולשון התורה יותר מבואר בו. We'll be able to understand deeper things. Okay, now he says the following, carries on. Okay, now I'm just jumping certain points. עכשיו נפרש תרועת צוותה התורה, ולא ביערה בפירוש אם היא בשופר, whether it's a shofar, או במצלתיים, or perhaps with tambourines. Whatever they're called, I don't know. Symbol, right. כדכתיב בצלצלי תרועה, because we say every single day, Hallelujah, בצלצלי תרועה. And what did they do there? They banged together. Right? או בחצוצרות. דכתיב בחצוצרות התרועה בידו. So therefore, the only time in Tanakh it's mentioned the word Truah is in relationship to or Chatzotzrot or to Tziltzalei Truah. Why? Because what? These are musical instruments which can create very short notes. Now, Kiblu Chachamim v'ra'u min hanviim. Look what he writes. The tradition of the Chachamim was, and they saw from the Nevi'im, Ad Moshe Rabbeinu mepi Agvura, Shatrua b'shofar. Halocha Moshe miSinai. What's wrong, Harold?
No, I'm nothing.
You're shocked. Correct? It's a shock. Because what we think is simple, guys, it's not simple. Because the logic is not to use a shofar. A shofar is used for a tkiyah. It's not used for a truah. The only time it's mentioned shofar is tkiyah. Why? Because it's one long note. But to do a tru'ah, broken sounds, anybody who's about to care knows that that's far more complicated, because you've got to put your tongue in the shofar and stop it, etc., 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 to get out proper truot. That's why most balei tkiyah have got ulcers on Rosh Hashanah. What?
Not this one.
What do you mean this one? You?
Okay.
Okay, right. But I'm saying it's more complex. Shvarim Truah is more complex. Right.
Stop the note.
Right, okay, right. But he says it's all Kabbalah. It's all a Masorah, a tradition. And it's not a tradition which is written in the Torah. It's got to be, it's handed over from Moshe. באמת שכנו משמען של פסוקים הללו. שאמר הכתוב, ויום שמחתכם מועד הזה ציווה בתרועה סתם. ואחר כך אמר, והקרבתם משל השם. קורבן. נלמד מזה בביאור שאין תרועה זו התרועה היא, שאותה היא על הקורבן. וזו אינו על הקורבן, זו על הקורבן. אבל היא חובה לכל עם ישראל. והוא שופר, שעדיין לא ציווה על החצוצות, because it hasn't been, you haven't had a mitzvah on the חצוצות, because that's just brought in בהשעה בעלותך. And therefore, the Ramban says, we are forced to come and say, there was a Kabbalah l'Moshe miSinai. It's a halacha l'Moshe miSinai that we use a shofar on Rosh Hashanah. Now, that is the introduction. What's wrong, Harold?
A very nice default.
Correct.
Halacha l'Moshe. Like.
I agree with you.
Yeah, okay.
I agree with you. It's halacha l'Moshe miSinai, because you won't find any pasuk which says in the Torah that you've got to use a
That should be
shofar.
the default for almost anything.
Correct. But there's only one exception to this. And what is that? The first commentary ever written on the Torah was written by whom? David HaMelech. David HaMelech. David HaMelech in Sefer Tehillim. Okay? And what does David HaMelech say in Sefer Tehillim? Tik'u b'chodesh shofar b'keseh liyom chageinu. Oh. So you've got Tik'u b'chodesh shofar b'keseh, on the day when the moon is covered. B'keseh liyom chageinu ki chok liYisrael hu mishpat elokei Yaakov. So what does David HaMelech teach us? David HaMelech, in actual fact, he was the one who brought this Kabbalah, this Masorah, this tradition, out into public. That is the source. Tik'u b'chodesh shofar b'keseh liyom chageinu. Why? Ki chok liYisrael hu. It's a statute. It's not written in the Torah. It becomes a mishpat. It becomes a tradition. That, guys, is the source of why we blow the shofar, or where we blow the shofar. He was the one who gave the first indication. Because let me tell you, if you look in Tanakh about Rosh Hashanah, you will find nothing except in Sefer Ezra. Sefer Ezra is the Sefer Nehemiah, is the only book which teaches about the environment of Rosh Hashanah when they came back from Eretz Yisrael. But if you go through Yoshua, Shoftim, Melachim, all of the Nevi'im, nothing is mentioned about Rosh Hashanah. You will find Yom Kippur. Yes, Yom Kippur is brought in Sefer Yeshayahu. Rosh Hashanah, David HaMelech. Right. Now, what's the next stage after David HaMelech? The next stage is the Mishnayot. And what we're going to do is, we're going to learn Mishnah. Now, the Mishnah on Rosh Hashanah is also an enigma. In what way is it an enigma? We start off by learning the first Mishnah, which is a simple one. Kol ha-shofarot ksherim chutz mishel para. You can use any shofar from any animal besides a para, mipnei shu keren, because what's it called? From the bull, from the cow family, it's called a keren and not a shofar. Says Rabbi Yossi, no. V'lo kol ha-shofarot nikru'u keren shenemar bimshoch keren hayovel. You can use everything. So therefore there was a machloket between the Tanakama, the first Tana, and the Mishnah. What can you use for a shofar? Machloket in the time of the Mishnah. Is any animal good or not? But I'm not worried about that Mishnah. Let's do the next Mishnah. Shofar shel Rosh Hashanah shel Yael Pashut. The usual usage of an animal for the Rosh Shofar is from a Yael, which is the translation of Yael is a 1 minute. It's not a ram, guys. It's one of the what? A gazelle, correct. A steinbock. Anybody who's been to the Kruger Park knows the steinbock. That's the true one. Okay? Yeah. Upiv pashut. Upiv metzubeh zahav. And the place where you put your mouth in was covered in gold. Yes. First Mishnah. Ushte chatzotzot min hatzaddim, shofar ma'arich, v'chatzotzot mekatzrot, shemitzvat hayom b'shofar. That is the Mishnah, guys. So therefore, how is the shofar blown? What do I care about today? First, let's learn Mishnah. You agree with me that the first source of Chazal was the Mishnah? Right. That's what I said. It's an enigma. Now, let's do line number 55 of the Bartanura. Piv metzupeh zahav v'shel mikdash kama. That's the way they used to blow it in the Beis HaMikdash. They used to blow it in the Beis HaMikdash. The Baal Tokea had a special shofar, where the shofar was covered in gold. And 2 chatzotzrot, 2 trumpets, were on its side as an accompaniment. Therefore you had an orchestra. The shofar was together with 2 trumpets. And that was the Mishnah, the mitzvah in the Beis Hamikdash. Therefore, the first indication of where you blow the shofar, guys, is what? It's a mitzvah of the Beis Hamikdash. Nothing to do with shuls. Nothing. What?
There were no shuls.
Okay, and there was nothing to blow in the houses. It was a mitzvah of what? Beis Hamikdash. Right? Let's carry on. On Taniyot b'shel zcharim, they used to use different types of shofarot, kfufim, u'piem etzupei kesef, shtei chatzotzot le'emtza, chatzotzot ma'arichot, shemitzvat hayom b'chatzotzot. So therefore, what have we got here? We've got the mitzvah. Now, if I ask you a simple question, what do the 2 Mishnah speak about? The first Mishnah speaks, what do you use? The second Mishnah is, where you use it. We haven't decided yet. When? We know. Rosh Hashanah. Okay? Shofar is now what you use. And according to the Tanakama, you don't use from a par. And according to Rabbi Yossi, you can use a par. Second one is where you blow it. Which place? Now comes along the Gemara in line number 65 and says the following. Tanya Namehacha. B'ameh dvarim amurim b'mikdosh. Aval b'gvulim makom sheyesh chatzotzrot ein shofar. Makom sheyesh shofar ein chatzotzrot. In the gvulim, no guys, you only used a shofar on Rosh Hashanah, and on fast days you used chatzotzrot. But v'chein hinhig Rabbi Chalafta b'tzipori. Rabbi Chalafta in Tzipori. Anybody knows where Tzipori is? Hope you all know. It's in the north, next to Bet Shai. It's an old city, an old town where all the Tanaim used to live after the destruction of the Beis Hamikdash, even before. Rabbi Hananio ben Tradion b'Sichni, in Sachnin. Rabbi Hananio ben Tradion lived in Sachnin, where the famous park is. And Uksheba Davar, what did they do? They blew the shofar and chatzotzrot. Amru chachamim. כשבא הדבר אצל חכמים, אמרו לו, מה פתאום? לא היינו נוהגים כן. אלא בשערי מזרח ובהר הבית בלבד. They only do this in Beis Hamikdash. And they held, you could do it outside the Beis Hamikdash.
Correct me if I'm wrong, didn't it just say in the western?
Pardon? In the eastern, B'Sharei Mizrach. In the shower of the Mizrach, opposite Har HaZeisi. Approximately there, yes.
So, according to this conduct, at the time of the Beis Hamikdash, if you weren't in the Beis Hamikdash, you didn't have to blow the shofar or hear the shofar?
Correct. It was only a mitzvah in the Beis Hamikdash. That was it was. Why is that? Why should it be just in the Beis Hamikdash? Where it all of a sudden becomes an avodas Hashem? The Gemara says yes. Let's learn a brilliant explanation of Rav Soloveitchik on this subject. I'm sorry I'm breaking a few things down for you, but when you learn the Mishnah, you begin to understand a different concept. And things change. And the way we do it is completely different. Let's do a brilliant explanation of Rav Soloveitchik on this subject. It says, Yom Teruah b'Mikdash mechayev shofar. Aval biyachad im chatzotzrot. Mitam b'chatzotzrot v'kol shofar hariu lifnei hamelech Hashem. You've got to do it in front of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Rosh Hashanah becomes a day where it's lifnei hamelech. You do it where the melech is. And where's the melech? The Beis Hamikdash. He says, Sikem harav shelefi zeh yesh shtei mitzvot shel chatzotzot. Every single day, לתקוע בחצוצות על קורבן מוסף, that's what you've got to do. והיא מצווה משותפת לכל ראש חודש וכדומה, because whenever there was musaf, they blew the חצוצרות. חצוצרות המלווה את השופר במקדש. They used to blow the shofar in the Beis Hamikdash. וזה מיוחד לראש השנה. וראיה לכך שבחצות על הקורבן הלוויים עמדו בעזרה והכהנים בשולחן החלבים, אבל בחצוצרות הם עמדו בשערי מזרח ובהר הבייס. In the entrance of Har HaBayis. As you go into the Beis HaMikdash, that's where they blew the shofar. That's what the Mishnah says. לא היו נוהגים כן, אלא בשערי מזרח ובהר הבייס בלבד. It wasn't in actual fact, in the Beis HaMikdash. Not on the place of the Mizbeach. It was outside. It was a way of what? The fanfare outside the palace. For the English guys, it's changing of the guards. That's what it was. It was something which was special on Rosh Hashanah. It was Hariyu Lifnei HaMelech. So therefore, a shofar does not become a day of panic. It's a day of glory. Now, Harav He'emik Od שתקיעת חצוצרות היא חובת שירה במקדש. יום תרועה מצטרף joins together וביום שמחתכם. לחייב מצווה חדשה של שירה במקדש. Now, I want to jump over one to the next page. Okay? In line number 95, I haven't got time because I want to go into it more deeply, other things. Line number 96. הוסיף הרב והסביר על ידי הניתוח הברכה של שופרות. למה יש קיום שירה בתקיעת שופר? What is it? Now, in the brachot of psukei shofarot, how do we start off the psukim of shofarot? אתה נגלית בענן כבודך. What we call revelation. Shofar speaks about revelation. HaKadosh Baruch Hu reveals himself. Okay? מתחילים מיד, line number 98, בקריאת פסוקים המזכירים את תקיעת שופר במעמד הר סיני במתן תורה. מסיימים בפסוקים מכתבי הנביאים, המזכירים את שופרו של משיח. Speaks about what's going to be at the end of days. Anybody who looks at all the psukim of shofarot, that's what you will see. What else do we say? Hallelu b'tziltzalei shofar. What does the Hallelu b'tziltzalei shofar mean? Praise him. So what is shofarot here? What was their concept of shofarot? It's a day of revelation. במקום שיש תקיעת שופר, יש גילוי שכינה. שערי תקיעת שופר מבשרת ומכריזה את גילוי השכינה. מתחילים בגילוי שכינה מן העבר, מעמד הר סיני, what happened, and you speak about the future. ומסיימים בגילוי שכינה לעתיד לבוא בימות המשיח. Okay? Where's it written? Is there a... Let me see. Va'alach b'sarot teiman. That's what we speak about. Look in the Psukei Shofarot. You will look and you will see that it speaks about the future days of Gilui Shechina. So what is Shofarot? Revelation. Revelation of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Now, there's a nation of Gilui Shechina. Gilui Shechina שבו כל העולם מרגיש בכל ראש השנה ביום הדין. כשתוקעים בשופר, ראש השנה, יש גילוי שכינה לכל יהודי. הקדוש ברוך הוא נמצא על ידך ולידינו. וכן משמע הפסוקים של שופרות, עלה אלוקים בתרועה, השם בכל שופר. when, בחצוצרות בכל שופר, הריעו לפני המלך השם. So what is in actual fact the shofar? It's a fanfare. Because Baruch Hu's next to us. That's what it is. תקעו בחודש שופר. כשיש גילוי שכינה, תקיעת שופר ביום זה מבשרת את גילוי השכינה של ראש השנה. And that, guys, is why has to be in the Beis Hamikdash. It started off in the Beis Hamikdash because that is the place of what? Of Gilui Shekhinah. And that's why in the time of the Beis Hamikdash, there was Bekoshi any tkiyas outside the Beis Hamikdash.
Where everyone went for
No, it wasn't one of the Shlosha Regalim. It wasn't one of the Shlosha Regalim. There was no mitzvah for Am Yisrael to go to the Beis Hamikdash on Rosh Hashanah. It was a place of the palace, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And that's where they blew. Rabbi Hanan ben Teradion says, no, do it everywhere, the Chatzotzot. And what became afterwards? What's wrong?
There's a difference, at least in my mind, between shofar and chatzotzot.
Correct.
One is trumpet, one is shofar.
But there's no mention in the whole of the Mishnah that they did it outside the Beis Hamikdash. Only after the Churban, Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai says, there's no Beis Hamikdash, now you can blow everywhere.
That's what we used, I think, for notification to gather and also for...
Also that, correct. But on Rosh Hashanah, it is, that's what they quote, B'chatzotzrot, the kol shofar hariu, that is the psukim of Malchuyot, of Shofarot.
But that's not from the Torah.
Right. Who wrote B'chatzotzrot the kol shofar hariu lifnei HaMelech? David HaMelech. Oh, so that's exactly that. What is the concept? Who was the first commentary on the Torah? Where did the Mishnah get it from? What was the first concept of, before we're talking about Churban Bayis?
I thought that to have David HaMelech, there was no bias either.
Mishkan. Right. Okay, but that's what it means. It's got to be Lifnei HaMelech. That's what it is. Lifnei HaMelech.
Do we know what he wrote this after
Okay,
they
can we move
wrote
on?
the
It doesn't make any difference where. No, it was before. Could also be before. Doesn't make any difference. But the concept which David HaMelech speaks about is Halalu b'tzilzelei tru'ah kol haneshomot ha'eliyot. That's the first.
Move on.
That is the first Mishnah. So you've got the what and you've got the where. Next Mishnah. The next Mishnah in line number 115 speaks about shofar shenisdak, a shofar which is broken. Okay, so you've got the what, the where, and what is considered a kosher shofar. Next one. Now comes the next case. After the Churban Bayis, Rabbi, and they were running away from the Romans. Okay, they started hiding, the Jews. And what happens then? The Jews are hiding in a cave, in a pit. And Jews pass around. And do they keep the mitzvah? That means to say, here we're talking about problems which arose after the Churban Bayis of people, do we still keep the mitzvah of shofar? And how they keep the mitzvah of shofar. And then the Mishnah says the following. Im kol shofar shama yatsa. Im kol avara shama. If he just heard the echo of the shofar, he doesn't keep it. So what's the chidush of the Mishnah here, guys? The chidush of the Mishnah is not there's a mitzvah to blow the shofar, but shmiyah. This is the first Mishnah which gives us an indication of what is the mitzvah. Blowing or hearing. Because if it would be blowing, what do I care whether I heard the echo or not? Pardon? Or, correct, from here we learn also that not everybody has to blow. Because if everybody has to blow, what do I care how I hear it? So therefore this chidush of the Mishnah speaks about the indication of how I keep the mitzvah. Again, it's not mentioned in the Torah. In actual fact, it contradicts the Torah, because if it's a day of blowing, what would I think the mitzvah is? To listen or to blow? To blow. But the Mishnah all of a sudden says, how did I hear it? Did I hear the echo or did I hear the blowing? If it's a mitzvah on blowing, what do I care how I heard it? I've got to blow. No, the Mishnah says. It's listening. Now comes the next stage of the Mishnah.
It's interesting because the non-Beit Mikdash, apart from the Reem and Kohanim,
there was nobody there. Exactly. And if you look at the Mishnah, which speaks about where they blew it, you see that the concept was more the blowing, the chatzotzrot with it, etc., etc. What do I care if there was chatzotzrot and the shofar carried on, etc., etc.? It would appear from the Mishnah that in the time of the Beis Hamikdash, the importance of the mitzvah was what? Was the blowing. And all of a sudden, after the Beis Hamikdash, we see that the listening became. What happened here? I'm just giving you, guys, when you learn Mishnah and what you're taught when you're in Kita Gimel, Dalet, Hey, Vav, and your children and grandchildren learning Mishnah, all of a sudden, okay, let me tell you, last night I gave a Mishnah on the 4th Perek. I gave a shir on the 4th Perek. And this year, what happened was, that I was on holiday, and I just learned Mishnayos. I just read the Mishnayos. And I was shocked. I couldn't believe what I was reading. Everything, if you take the Mishnah as a Mishnah itself, Masechet Rosh Hashanah blows you. Because all of a sudden, things blows, exactly. Everything which I think I understood and I've taught, goodness knows how many times Masechet Rosh Hashanah, if I look at the Mishnah as a Mishnah itself, without any commentaries, things don't work out. Let's carry on. Next Mishnah. Osh or V'chen, line 121. V'chen Misha Yaveh Acharei Bet HaKnesset.
Which Mishnah are you on?
Line 121, Mishnah Zayin. Mishnah Zayin. Hatokel letoch habor, or letoch hadut, or letoch hapitas. These are all places where the Jews used to hide. Im kol shofar shama yatsa, v'im kol avara shama lo yatsa. V'chen mi shaya over acharei bet hakneset. O shaya beito samuch lebeit hakneset, v'shama kol shofar, or kol megillah, im kiven libo yatsa, v'im lav lo yatsa. All of a sudden now comes a new concept, intention. Awareness. Was I aware that I heard the shofar, or was I daydreaming? The Mishnah says, I have to be aware I'm listening to the shofar, because if I'm daydreaming, I don't keep mitzvah. Im kiven libo yatsa, v'im lav lo yatsa. Says Rabbi Yehuda Anossi, an interesting statement. V'ava pisha zeh shama v'zeh shama, because listening is the most passive sense which a person has. You can listen in your sleep to your wife, and most of the men here are daydreaming when their wives speak to them. Okay? But you hear, but you don't listen. Correct? You hear and you don't listen. Correct? All of us have teachers who said, guys, you're hearing me, but you're not listening to me. Because listening means, says Rabbi Yehuda Anossi, is not, okay, are not sound waves which go through your ear. It is what? It is, do you understand? Are you aware? Okay? So it's not your wife talking to you. It's the husband. Sorry, Abigail. Right. Okay. Okay, so therefore, what is it, guys? It's awareness. So are you aware of the different sounds of the shofar? And that's what Rabbi Yehuda Anossi says. You have two people who are listening. One's aware and one's not aware. And that's what he says. Af al pi shezeh shama v'zeh shama, zeh kiven libo v'zeh lo kiven libo. Now, Rabbi Yehuda Anossi, in the only place in the Mishnah does he speak about two stories. The only place in the Mishnah.
Two what?
Stories. What are the two stories? Vaya. Next Mishnah, guys. Vaya ka'asher yarim Moshe yado v'gaba Yisrael. When Moshe Rabbeinu lifts up his hands, and Am Yisrael win. Says Rabbi Yehuda Anossi, וכי ידיו של משה עושות מלחמה, או שוברות מלחמה, אלא לומר לך, כל זמן שהישראל מסתכלים כלפי מעלה, when they looked up, היו משדלים את ליבם לאביהם שבשמיים, became subservient, היו מתגברים, ואם לאו, היו נופלים. כיוצא בדבר אתה אומר, עשה לך שרף. It's the story of the copper snake. שים אותו על נס, put it up on a banner, והיה קול נשוך וראה אותי, וכי נחש מאמש לו נחש מחיה, אלא בזמן שישראל מסתכלים כלפי מעלה, ומשעבדים את ליבם, היו מתרפים, ואם לאו, היו נימוקים. Now, what happens in this Mishnah? What is the parable? And what is the connection? And the answer is, shofar now becomes a symbol, a sign. It's not something which is magic, not sounds which are magic. It's your awareness, what you are listening to. Let's look at the Rav Bartanura in the line 135, and he says, Mishum da'ayri le'el b'kavanat halev, because before the Mishnah speaks about kavanat halev, intention, awareness, connection. Da'ayri le'el b'kavanat halev, tani nami lahach de'itbei b'shah shemachavnim, the same concept. Now, so therefore, what have we got? We've got, in the story of Amalek and the story of the Nachash, what is the sense which is used? Sight. You become a lot more aware. You look, you have to lift up your eyes. You have to create a connection between your eyes and the object. What was the object in the time of the battle of Milchama, of Amalek? It was what? It was Moshe Rabbeinu lifting up his hands. What was the object of Nachash HaNachoshet? Okay? Your awareness that HaKadosh Baruch Hu creates the refu'ah for all your illnesses. Now, what does shofar now become? It is not the sense of sight, but it's the sense of sound. HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants to teach you. There are two senses in which you become connected to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And that becomes avodas halev. Sight and sound connect up. But there's something far deeper than this. Because the story of Nachash HaNachoshet is not Moshe Rabbeinu doing anything. All what Moshe Rabbeinu does is what? Is builds the Nachash. But Moshe Rabbeinu with Amalek, what was Moshe Rabbeinu doing? What was Moshe Rabbeinu doing there? Now let's go back to the Mishnah. V'chi yadav shel Moshe osot milchama, okay? Ela kol zman שהיו ישראל מסתכלים כלפי מעלה ומשעבדים את ליבם לאביהם שבשמיים. What was Moshe Rabbeinu here? He was the shaliach. Okay, just think to yourselves, soldiers who are fighting. Now can they look at the eyes of Moshe Rabbeinu? No, of course not. Why can't they look at Moshe Rabbeinu? Because they won't be able to fire their tanks. They won't be able to throw their spears. They won't be able to do what? Bow and arrow. Fight. So therefore, what is it now? 1 minute. Therefore, what is it now? Moshe Rabbeinu is davening for them. And in their heart, they connect up to the tefillot of Moshe Rabbeinu. Let's look in a brilliant explanation of one of the great commentators on Masechet Rosh Hashanah. Yom Torah. He was a Rav in Yerushalayim. Unfortunately, he died when he was very young. You can see. His name was the Maharal Ibn Chaviv. He was born 1654 and he passed away approximately when he was 40 years old. He was prolific, absolutely prolific. And he wrote this magnificent sefer on Rosh Hashanah and Masechet Sukkah and Masechet Yomah. And he says the following: Yesh lomar, the Moshe haya shlucho shel Yisrael. Moshe Rabbeinu was the shliach of Klal Yisrael. Litpalel. וכשהיו ישראל מסתכלים ומשעבדים ליבם לשמיים, היה לו כוח וגברה להרים ידו. It was a two-way system. If Moshe Rabbeinu was sure that the people were connected to him, then his davening was good. And if he wasn't connected, if Am Yisrael weren't connected to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, to Moshe Rabbeinu, and were not connected to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, then his tefillah was no good. That means to say, a shliach tzibur on Rosh Hashanah or a Baal Tokea has to be connected to the Kehillah. Has to be connected. Has to have this imun, faith that the people who he's davening for and the people who are blowing for are connected. Now, there's something very interesting here, because there are two simanim which speak about the mitzvah of shliach tzibur. The first time it's mentioned in Shulchan Aruch is in Siman Nun Bet. Siman Nun Bet speaks about the rules of a shliach tzibur, who the shliach tzibur has to be. Yet, anybody who opens up the halachos of Shulchan Aruch on Rosh Hashanah, Siman Taf Kuf Pei Hey, will see that there are another time Shulchan Aruch speaks about the din of Shliach Tzibur, Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. Because Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur need a different type of Shliach Tzibur. Different type. And we learn it from this Mishnah. The connection which Rabbi Yehuda HaNossi connected between the stories of Moshe Rabbeinu in Amalek, in Nachash HaNachoshes, teaches us that Am Yisrael Meshabdim et Libam. They were connected to Moshe Rabbeinu. They looked at his hands. V'chi Yadav Shel Moshe. What does it mean, Yadav Shel Moshe? Yadav was like the Baal Tokea. He was blowing. And Moshe Rabbeinu davens for them. But what does it mean? Through the medium of Moshe Rabbeinu, Am Yisrael were connected to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And connected to HaKadosh Baruch Hu means they were connected to Moshe Rabbeinu. And that's why the Shliach Tzibur becomes such an integral part of Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur. And it's not just that, because usually there was no need for a Shliach Tzibur's default. It was for people who didn't know how to daven. Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur is something else completely. It's not just a default, but it's part and parcel of the whole concept of Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur, and especially the Baal Tokea. Why? Because the mitzvah is my listening to his tekiyos. So he becomes like a medium for us. Because without his tekiyot, it doesn't help. And that's why the last part of the Mishnah is who can blow. Let's do the last part of the Mishnah, line number 131. Line number 131 is the following. Cheresh shote v'katan eino motziim et harabim yidei chobatam. They can't keep be motzias the mitzvah of Tikkat Shofar. And the question is, why not? Why? If the mitzvah is to listen, why can't they blow for us? Why can't they blow for us? The mitzvah is to listen. So if I've got a boy who's 10 years old, who's this most amazing Baal Tekiah, why can't he be Motzimi? This, guys, is perhaps the essential question which relates to Tekiyat Shofar. Because what is Tekiyat Shofar? Tekiyat Shofar is a two-way system. It's like you driving backwards, forwards in a circular system. I hear a Tekiyah, I connect up with the Baal Tokea. The Baal Tokea is what? Is like a Moshe Rabbeinu for us. A Tekiyah has to be created through somebody who connects up to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And that becomes the essence. That's why these Mishnayot, please take note that it's quite amazing how Rabbi Yehuda HaNossi wrote this Mishnah. Let's go over it again. Mishnah Chet. Line number 125. Vaya, כאשר ירים משה ידו בגבר ישראל וגומר, וכי ידיו של משה עושות מלחמה, או שוברות מלחמה, אלא לומר לך, כל זמן שישראל מסתכלים כלפי מעלה ושעבדים את ליבם שאבני שמיים מתגברים, ואם לאו היו נופלים. כיוצא בדבר, אתה אומר, עשה לך שרף ושים אותו על נס, היה כל נשוך וראה אותו, וחי, וכי נחש ממי שלמך מחיה, אלא בזמן שעם ישראל מסתכלים כלפי מעלה, משעבדים את ליבם היו מתרפים, ואם לאו היו נקים. חרש שוטה וקטן, the same Mishnah. Why has Rabbi Yehuda Hanossi put it in the same Mishnah? Because in order to create a tekiyah, you need what? A Baal Tokea. People who are 100% aware of what they are doing. They are Shlichei Tzibur. And the Shliach Tzibur on Rosh Hashanah is an integral part of our Tefillah. And let me explain why. Because on Rosh Hashanah you have a Tfilat Yachid and Tfilat Tzibur. Yom Kippur you have the Tfilat Yachid and the Tfilat Tzibur. What the Chazan does in Chazarat HaShatz on Yom Kippur, and please take note, and Rav Soloveitchik already spoke about it in Ala Tshuva, is that the vidui, which we say right at the end of our tefillot, after Baruch Atah Hashem Havarech et Amo Yisrael Bashalom, okay, then we begin vidui. But when does the Chazan do it? He davens in the middle of Chazarat HaShatz. Because as Rav Soloveitchik quite brilliantly says, on Yom, the vidui of a Yachid is begging, pleading. The tefillah of Tzibur is something completely different. We all daven together. We're Klal Yisrael who daven. Now the same thing applies on Rosh Hashanah. Because where do we do tkiyot? We do tkiyot in the middle of tefillah. Now, let's say in the middle of the Chazan's davening, all of a sudden he forgets that he didn't say Shema. Right? Baal Musaf, you get these Chazonim who come late, etc., etc. I didn't say Shema. Can he stop in the middle of Kriyas, in the middle of Chazoras HaShatz and say Shema? Why not? It's a hefsek. Why isn't a tkiyah a hefsek?
Some people think it is.
No, nobody does it is. Nobody. In the middle of Chazoras HaShatz, nobody says it is.
We don't speak.
We don't speak, but the Chazan, you're allowed to blow the shofar. Why can you keep a mitzvah which isn't connected to tefillah in the middle of Chazoras HaShatz? Or if you go to a shul of Hasidim, they will even blow the shofar in the middle of tefillah belachash. Why? It's a hefsek. What's the answer, guys? Shofar is a tefillah. Only there are two types of tefillahs. There's tefillah of words and there's tefillah of sounds. Tefillah of words and tefillah of sounds. Listening to sounds. Listening to the glorification of Hashem. Listening to the Tu'ah, because the tefillah is made up of words and sounds. Sometimes you need to just keep quiet and listen. Okay? And that becomes the essence of Kabbalas Ol Malchus Shamayim. Kabbalas Ol Malchus Shamayim on Rosh Hashanah is two separate dimensions. One is in awe, and then you have Mi Yemaleh al Gvurot Hashem Yashmea Kol Tilato. Who can say the praise of HaKadosh Baruch Hu? Who can stand in front of HaKadosh Baruch Hu? You stand in awe. And all what you can do is keep shtum. Listen. It prevents you from saying words. Now we all know that the time of Chas v'Chalila Avelos, there's sometimes people say, you say to yourself, I've got no words to express myself. Rosh Hashanah is a day of two dimensions. It's your ability to say, and it's your inability to say. And that's why the shofar becomes like the battle. And it has to be, the shofar has to be used as a kli to enhance this concept of sometimes words don't help. And that's what this parak of the Mishnah speaks about. Number one is what kli you use. A natural kli, not man-made. It is completely natural. It's not a chatzotzra, it's not a trumpet, it's not symbols, it's nature. Shofar is nature. It's the way HaKadosh Baruch Hu created a kli in the world which makes sounds. The next stage is where you do it. The original place was Beis HaMikdash, because it's Lifnei HaMelech. You're standing in front of the king on Rosh Hashanah. Number 3 is Kavona. Awareness, intent. And the 5th thing is, who's the Baal Tokea? Who's the Shaliach? And Rabbi Yehuda HaNossi builds this up in a way, in a most unbelievable way. He wants to create like this crescendo, that at the end of the day, don't get somebody who doesn't understand what shofar is. You have to get somebody who understands what the shofar is. And that is this perek of, which speaks about shofar. And that's what the Ramban says. When the Ramban speaks about that, let's go back to the Ramban, where he writes, okay, at the end, he says in line number 26, V'nei nitna lanu haTorah ha'inyan hazeh beremet. It's given to us in hints. Yom Tru'ah. What does the word Tru'ah mean? What does Zichron mean? What does Tru'ah mean? והיה נודע בישראל מפי הנביאים והאבות הקדושים עד משה רבינו. Now why is this? Because sometimes you can't write things. You can't write it. You have the inability to write. You have to have the expressions. You have to have the sounds. You have to have Torah Sheba'al Peh. Writing is too metzamtzem. What does metzamtzem mean? It's too, what? Restrictive. Thank you. Brilliant. It restricts you. And therefore, the Ramban says, Torah Shebichsav, the concepts of Rosh Hashanah are so great that words restrict. And later on, David HaMelech develops these things. Tiku b'chodesh shofar, halalu b'tziltzalei truah, b'chatzotzot v'kol shofar hariu. David HaMelech, in his poetic terminology, was able to give out some of the secrets of Rosh Hashanah. And after that comes the times of the Mishnah. And slowly, words come out to explain to us the secrets of Rosh Hashanah. Shana Tova and K'tiva B'Chatima Tova.
I go every year to kindergarten.
Pardon?
Every year I go during Chodesh Elul to the kindergarten. All my grandchildren. I'm going to go once to Modi'in this time, and anyway. And I always say, if you notice children when they hear the shofar, what do? They put their fingers in the ear. They're fine. So I tell them, what do you do when you say the Shema?